The smell of freshly baked bread and sizzling garlic filled the air as Chef Marcus worked his magic in the kitchen. It was just another busy evening at his restaurant, a place known for its warmth, not just in its food, but in the way it welcomed people from all walks of life. He wiped his hands on his apron and glanced towards the dining area, where a few late-night customers were finishing their meals. That's when he saw her. A black woman stood near the entrance, her face tense with pain as she leaned against the wall for support. She held her stomach, wincing, clearly in distress. People around her whispered, some stealing glances, but doing nothing. Marcus instinctively stepped forward, but before he could reach her, a doctor in a white coat rushed past him. The doctor, young with sharp eyes and a smug expression, strode up to the woman, but instead of helping, he sneered. "We don't take walk-ins like you," the doctor muttered, just loud enough for Marcus to hear. Marcus stopped in his tracks, his stomach twisting. Something was off. This doctor didn't look like he belonged to any nearby hospital, and his words weren't just dismissive. They were filled with something colder, something uglier. The woman's hand trembled as she reached into her bag. "Are you sure about that?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. Then, with one swift motion, she pulled out a badge, shiny, unmistakable, FBI. Marcus barely had time to process what was happening before the doctor's face went pale. The entire restaurant fell silent. What was really going on here? And why did this so-called doctor seem more afraid than concerned? Marcus stood frozen, his heartbeat loud in his ears, as the weight of the moment sank in. The woman, still gripping her FBI badge, locked eyes with the so-called doctor. The air in the restaurant felt thick with tension, every customer watching. The silent standoff unfold. The doctor's lips parted slightly, but no words came out. His face had lost all its smugness, replaced by a flicker of panic. The woman didn't move, her breathing steady despite the pain in her body. She was trained, for moments like this, to keep her composure even when faced with hostility. But right now, Marcus could see something else in her eyes, beyond confidence. Frustration, maybe even exhaustion. "I'm going to ask you again," she said, her voice firm but controlled. "Are you sure you don't take walk-ins?" The doctor cleared his throat, his hands clenching into fists. Look, I don't know what you're trying to do, but I'm just here to pick up some food." Marcus narrowed his eyes. That didn't make sense. The man wasn't holding a takeout bag, and he hadn't even approached the counter. He had come straight to the woman, as if he already knew she was there. The woman took a slow step forward, wincing slightly, but refusing to let her pain show. "You approached me like a doctor, addressed me like a patient." She lifted an eyebrow. "But now you're saying you're just here for food." The man scoffed. "I don't have to explain myself to you." Marcus felt the tension crackle in the air. This wasn't just about a rude doctor refusing service. Something deeper was going on, and the FBI agent, whoever she was, knew it too. Before anyone could say another word, the restaurant's front door swung open, and a gust of cold night air rushed in. Two men in dark suits stepped inside, their eyes scanning the room. The moment they spotted the woman, they exchanged a quick glance. Marcus saw it. So did she. She inhaled sharply, bracing herself. The pain in her stomach had nothing to do with the situation unraveling before her, but it made everything that much harder. She could tell these men weren't just here for dinner. The doctor's expression shifted again. If he had looked nervous before, now he looked downright terrified. He took a step back, his head shaking slightly, as if he already knew what was coming. "Agent Monroe," one of the suited men said, his voice smooth but firm. "You should come with us. Marcus saw her jaw tighten. Whoever these men were, she didn't trust them. "Funny," she said, her voice even. "I don't recall asking for company." The second man, taller and broader than the first, took another step forward. "It's not a request." The restaurant was dead silent. The other customers didn't dare move, some pretending to look at their phones, others staring outright. Marcus realized his hands were still gripping his apron, his knuckles white. He didn't know much about Agent Monroe, but something told him she wasn't the type to back down easily. And something about these men, about the doctor, felt off. For a moment, Monroe just stood there, assessing the situation. The doctor looked ready to bolt. The two men looked ready to take her, whether she agreed or not. Marcus knew one thing for sure. This night was far from over. Marcus felt his pulse quicken as he stood behind the counter, watching the silent tension stretch between Agent Monroe and the two men in suits. The whole restaurant felt like it was holding its breath. The doctor looked like he was about to run, but his legs wouldn't move. Monroe shifted her weight slightly, still favoring her side. "You keep saying I should come with you," she said, tilting her head. "But you never said why." The taller man sighed, as if he was growing impatient. "This isn't the place for questions." Monroe let out a quiet laugh. "That's funny because I think it is." Her fingers tapped against her badge, still visible in her hand. "I don't go anywhere with unidentified men in dark suits who won't state their business, especially not when I'm in the middle of an active investigation." Marcus blinked. Active investigation. He had no idea what was going on, but it was clear Monroe wasn't some random agent caught in the wrong place. She had been tracking something, or someone. The doctor swallowed hard. He looked between the men and Monroe, his face pale. Marcus wasn't sure what scared him more, her presence or theirs. And then without warning, the doctor bolted. He shoved past one of the suited men and made a dash for the back exit. Monroe didn't hesitate. She pushed through the pain in her side and took off after him. Marcus hesitated for only a second before he followed. The doctor burst through the kitchen, knocking over a stack of clean plates, sending them crashing to the floor. The kitchen staff barely had time to react before he was already pushing through the back door. Monroe was right behind him, her movements precise, trained. Marcus rushed outside, just in time to see the doctor stumble, nearly falling, against a row of garbage bins. Monroe didn't slow down. She lunged, grabbing the back of his coat, yanking him to a stop. "Enough running," she said, breathing hard but steady. "You're out of places to go." The doctor twisted, his eyes wide with desperation. "You don't understand. They're watching me." Marcus glanced over his shoulder. The two men had just stepped into the alley, moving calmly, as if they already knew how this would end. Monroe didn't loosen her grip. "Who are they?" she demanded. The doctor's breathing was ragged, his fear almost overwhelming. They set me up," he stammered. "I was just following orders. I didn't know what they were doing at first." "Doing what?" Monroe cut in. The man's eyes darted to the suited men, then back to Monroe. His face twisted with regret, maybe even guilt. "People came to us for help, and they just disappeared." Marcus felt a chill creep up his spine. Monroe's jaw clenched. "And you let it happen?" The doctor swallowed hard, nodding. "I didn't know at first, but when I figured it out, I tried to leave. They wouldn't let me." His hand shook as he pointed toward the two men in suits. "They're not here for you. They're here to clean up loose ends." The taller man sighed, shaking his head. "This has gone on long enough." He reached into his coat. Before he could pull out whatever was inside, Monroe moved. In one swift motion, She knocked the doctor to the side and pulled her weapon, aiming directly at the suited men. "Don't," she warned, her voice sharp. The taller man smirked. "You don't know what you're getting yourself into, Agent Monroe." Monroe didn't flinch. "Try me." For a second, nobody moved. Then, sirens. Red and blue lights flashed. At the end of the alley, the sound of approaching vehicles growing louder. The suited men exchanged a glance, then took a step back. "We'll be seeing you," the taller man said. Before both of them turned and disappeared into the night, Monroe didn't lower her weapon until she was sure they were gone. The doctor was still on the ground, breathing hard. "What happens now?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Monroe exhaled. "You talk. Everything you know." Marcus watched as uniformed officers finally arrived. Stepping into the alley, Monroe slowly straightened, rolling her shoulders, as if the adrenaline was finally wearing off. She turned to Marcus, offering him a small nod. "Thanks for not running." Marcus let out a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. "Didn't feel like the right thing to do." Monroe smirked. "No, it didn't." As the officers took control of the scene, Marcus stepped back, watching as Monroe led the doctor toward one of the patrol cars. The night wasn't what he expected when he started his shift, but somehow it felt like things had ended the way they were supposed to, and as he turned back toward the restaurant, he had a feeling this wouldn't be the last time he saw Agent Monroe.